Hello, everyone. I hope you're all happy and healthy along with your respected families wherever you're located on this God's green earth. Welcome to today's episode of the Real Talks with Amini. I'm honored to have Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Rardin, a retired U.S. Army Reserves officer who has served in Afghanistan as a trainer to the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces, as a friend of Afghanistan, and as an advocate for U.S.-Afghanistan relationship, U.S.-Afghanistan interest. And he has been advocating and has been involved with the Afghan community and Afghan allies in the past 4 years almost, advocating for help for them in various platforms in various capacities. So we'll talk with him about the situation in Afghanistan, about the status of U.S. Afghan relationship, the threat levels emanating from Afghanistan, and the path forward for both of the countries. So welcome on the show, Kevin. Glad to have you. Thank you for the opportunity. Maybe we can start by talking about yourself. How did you get involved with the U.S. Armed Forces, and how did you end up in Afghanistan? If you can talk about your experience there, what was your impression of the Afghan people that you encountered, your partners and allies on the ground? And what you took away from the country.
Thank you, Sadiq. I'm glad to be here. I'm always happy to talk about Afghans and Afghanistan. My service there was one of the defining moments in my life, and I'll never forget it. I'm a lawyer by profession. I just recently retired last year after 40 years as a lawyer, practicing lawyer. For most of that time, I was an assistant district attorney here in Memphis, prosecuting criminal cases for the state of Tennessee. But for 21 of those years concurrently, I was a member of the U.S. Army Reserve, Judge Advocate General's Corps, the Army's legal corps. So when 9/11 occurred, of course, like so many people, I was outraged by what had happened. I wanted to find some way to serve, some way I could help. It seemed to me I could most help as with my legal experience, but I wasn't really sure how I would fit in. Initially, I thought I wanted to serve as a prosecutor with the military commissions at Guantanamo, and was offered a job there. Ultimately, I didn't take it because I was concerned about the validity of those proceedings, concerned about the level of due process that the defendants would receive under those proceedings. So reluctantly, I turned it down. The years passed, and I hadn't been called upon to serve. There was a lot of uncertainty about, well, will I be called upon, when, where, how, and so on. By the time 2007 rolled around, I got tired of the uncertainty. And also, I was feeling a little guilty about still wearing the uniform and not having done anything when so many reservists and National Guardsmen were being called upon to serve, not just once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and so on. And I hadn't done anything yet. So I finally screwed up my courage and just volunteered as an individual. I let the Army know that I was willing to go. My family supported me in that decision. Of course, they weren't thrilled about it, but they understood what I was doing and the importance of it. So I volunteered. I was offered a position as the command judge advocate for the Afghan Regional Security Integrated Command South, located at Kandahar Airfield. The mission of the command was to train our counterparts in the Afghan National Army and the Afghan police. As command judge advocate, I was the commander's legal advisor but I was also a mentor to my counterparts in the Afghan Army's 205th Corps. So I spent part of my days at the airfield, meeting my responsibilities as command judge advocate, and then I spent part of my days with my mentees, my counterparts in the Afghan Army, the prosecutors, defense counsel, judges, legal advisors, and so on. So, in October of 2007, and bear in mind during the first Persian Gulf War, I had never been on active duty. So, flew to, but anyway, I spent about a week learning the rudiments of active duty life. Then I got on a plane with lots of overseas. I think we made a camp Arif John in Kuwait. I was there a day or two. Then I boarded a C-130 cargo plane, landed at Bagram Airfield in the middle of the night. The ramp came down. The other soldiers and I walked out. Now, most of them were there with units. They were coming over with units. I was on my own. I stepped out. It was the middle of the night, and I thought to myself, Sadiq, what in God's name have I done? I could be at home. Instead, I'm standing on the tarmac at Bagram Airfield in the middle of the night. Then I thought, well, it's too late for all that second guessing now. I saw some lights up ahead. I walked toward the lights. The lights were the USO Center. I got there. I called a lawyer posted at Bagram that I knew slightly. He came down and met me. I got a room for the night. I was there at Bagram a couple of days, and then I boarded a convoy, went down to Kabul, worked there for about a week, and then I flew down to Kandahar Airfield to start my job there. Mm-hmm. It was the wildest thing I've ever done in my life. I mean, at age 49, I said, I'll go. And I went on my own, by myself, to Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And even though things turned out so tragically, I have never regretted going. Never, not once. As I said, it was the defining moment of my life. It changed me forever. Yes. I'm the person I am today because I served in Afghanistan.
Yeah. We're glad that you did. I'm sure the family is proud. We are proud of all of our American allies who volunteered to serve with Afghan forces on the ground, in the fight, in the righteous fight that we were doing. Fighting against the Taliban, fighting against the terrorists, and all the rest of them. So tell us about, you did contribute to the mission, and it had an impact in terms of empowering the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces to do a better job in whatever duties that they were doing. And then people like you, like there were thousands of Americans who served in various capacities. Some unfortunately lost their lives, some got wounded, and so all of you, you gave something from your life to that mission. And then watching in 2021, the withdrawal, and then the Taliban rolling in and coming back and recapturing the country, a group that had facilitated Al Qaeda in the first place to attack the United States, once again coming back and taking over Afghanistan, and all their Al Qaeda advisors and operators coming back with them. What did you feel? What do you think the rest of the veteran community felt about it?
Well, the summer of 2021 for me was just devastating. And I suspect most Americans who served in Afghanistan felt the same way. As I said, when I was on active duty in Afghanistan, I was with my Afghan counterparts 5 or 6 days a week. I had an interpreter who worked with me every day because, unfortunately, I don't speak Dari or Pashto, so I needed a little help there with the language. When I before I started the work, I was a little bit nervous because I could probably count on the fingers of one hand the number of times I had been with Muslims. And we, in the briefing before we went over, we were warned, we being American military personnel, do not talk about religion. Do not talk about that. Do not talk about your religion or theirs. So I thought, oh, gee, that made me a little nervous, a little uncertain. But I found that my Afghan counterparts, once you got past the surface differences of language, some cultural differences, religious differences, they were Muslim, I'm Christian. Once you get past those things, they were exactly like me. And they were members of a profession. They had families. They had jobs. They were obviously worried about the future, worried for their families, and so on. I became very, very close to them. And especially close to my interpreter. And I am still close to him. And I'll circle back to the warning about religion. One day, he and I were driving back to Kandahar Airfield after we'd been over to the Afghan 205th Corps. I don't know if you're familiar with Kandahar Airfield, but there was a huge outer perimeter. The Afghans were inside the perimeter, and then there was an inner perimeter surrounding the airfield. And I could drive from the airfield over to the Afghan camp without ever leaving the outer perimeter. So one day we were driving back, and my interpreter said, Colonel, my other interpreters in the Terp camp say that Christians worship three gods, but I say they only worship one God. And I thought, oh no. And I almost drove off the road. I said, well, I think we only worship one God, but I can see how some Muslims think we worship three gods. And I said, I'll ask my priest and see if I can come up with a better explanation. So I did. And later on, I offered him the explanation that my priest provided me. But I must not have been very convincing because my interpreter said, well, that's okay, Colonel. I don't understand all of my religion either. So religion was not an issue. It's just, I think back and, sometimes I wonder how much my Afghan counterparts learned from me, but I can say I learned an enormous amount from them about how to survive in a high pressure situation and yet remain human and humane. They showed me every courtesy. I ate with the Afghan lawyers. I ate in the interpreters camp. I rode in convoys with them. I rode on planes with them. I shared their experiences. We became very, very close. And I stayed in touch with my interpreter after I got back from Afghanistan. he was trying to finish he was and is married and has children. He was trying to finish his education and his master's degree. So I sent him some money from time to time to help him, even though he never asked me for a penny. I just wanted to. And over time, our relationship deepened. It became more of a family relationship than a strictly professional relationship. At some point, he became my nephew, and I became his uncle.
Oh.
So that went on for several years. He had applied for a special immigrant visa. This is a man who gave our country and Afghanistan 15 years of honorable service as an interpreter. But in the August, I think it was August of 2021, he called me one day. It was Saturday morning here in Memphis, where I live. And he said, "Uncle, the Taliban are in the city. What do I do?" And I thought, and I thought to myself, I don't know what to do. I'm halfway around the world, and but I can't leave him. He's married, he has 8 children. He calls me uncle. I call him nephew. I cannot leave him without doing everything I can do to get it. Some other people, other veterans, interpreter. We formed a loose network. We tried everything we could do, evacuation planes from the airport in Kabul. We had him, his wife, and his 8 children out on the asphalt outside the airport for days, while we worked furiously to try to get them on a plane. Some of the people had some shadowy connections. I think they were with people in the Central Intelligence Agency. We tried everything. We even were able to email the people inside the airport, the Americans inside the airport, to say, look, he and his family are outside gate such and such. Can you go get them? They wouldn't do it. Someone inside the airport took a picture of him and his family sitting on the asphalt. They were close enough to take a picture. I have that picture. But they wouldn't let him in. Finally, my interpreter had the good sense to take his family home. That was just before the attack at the airport, in which so many people were killed and some American personnel were killed. Thankfully, he had the good sense to take his family home. Well, we weren't sure what was going to happen then. We feared a massive slaughter in Kabul afterwards. So we persuaded him to take his family to Mazar-Sharif. And all the money transfer systems were down initially. But we heard about this Islamic system of money transfer called Hawala. And so I thought, well, we have nothing to lose. I read a Wikipedia article about Hawala. Still don't understand it, but we got some money. What do we do? We got some money via one. It was either Western Union or MoneyGram. It was still open. Then some merchant in Kabul picked it up, transferred it to a merchant in Mazar-Sharif, and then it got to my interpreter, so it worked. I was amazed. So we sent them. They endured that lullaby. They found some way to get them out. They were Mazar Sharif for several months. At one point, he was actually arrested by the Taliban, which was terrifying. But he's a smart man, and apparently the Taliban soldiers who picked him up weren't that smart. He talked his way out of it. He was released. He said he was just in town to see the Blue Mosque. So, and they believed him. He was released. We came so close in November of 2021 to getting him and his family out. We found them a place in a safe house in Kabul. Got them back to Kabul, safe house. They were scheduled to fly out along with some other Afghans around Thanksgiving. Flight was canceled at the last moment. That happened so many times, cancellations. It was so stressful. It was stressful for me. I can't imagine how stressful it must have been for him and his family. Mm. But he persevered. Eventually, early in 2022, with the help of another group, we got the family out to Pakistan on tourist visas. He went to the American Embassy in Islamabad, got everything finished on his special immigrant visa for himself and his family. Then, thanks to a person who wishes to remain anonymous, who paid $10,000 for the family's airfare, he, his wife, and their 8 children flew to Houston in February of 2022. Wow. I wasn't able to go down to see him because my wife had just had some surgery, but some friends who were in my group went to meet them at the airport. I went down to, in May of 2022, to see him and his family. We had not seen each other in 13 years.
Wow.
Needless to say, it was a very emotional meeting.
I'm sure.
And I met his wife, his children. I was so thankful. And I must say, the hero of that story was my interpreter. You know, I to people who have thanked me or congratulated me, I say, well, my friends and I were we had small parts in this story. The hero was my interpreter, because this man kept himself and his family together all through those months of fear. He never once faltered. He's the bravest man I know. I went down to see him again in January of this year, and I was so pleased at all the progress the family has made. When I first saw them in May of 2022, they were in this teeny tiny apartment. All 10 of them. They were stacked in there like firewood. But when I came back in January of this year, they had a bigger apartment. The children had made so much progress in school. I was so impressed. They were speaking English to me. His wife speaks some English now. Now, for almost 3 years, he worked as a legal assistant with a nonprofit immigration law firm in Houston, Texas. It's an offshoot of the YMCA in Houston. Unfortunately, he's unemployed now because of the President Trump's executive order on the first day of this new term. He cut off funding for anything to do with refugees.
Wow.
So I'm very worried about them. There are 8 children involved here, all the way from almost young adults to small children. But I'm confident in my interpreter. Um, I'm confident in him. If he has the fortitude to keep a cool head during all those months while the Taliban were looking for him and others who helped Americans, he has the fortitude to find his way forward in Houston, Texas.
Absolutely.
I'm very, very, very proud to know him. Very
Absolutely.
proud to consider him a member of my family.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, let me thank you, even though you will not take it, but thank you and all of the colleagues who supported him and supported other Afghans to get to safety. As you indicated, Afghans are brave, generally, most of us. There are some cowards
Yes.
that we call them Taliban and terrorists. But
Yes.
majority of Afghans
Yes.
are brave men and women who stand up for their freedom and for freedom of others, and they persevere. They try hard and they make a good living. So really an emotional story. Just to point out to you and the viewers, we had some technical issues as you were describing the story. There were moments that we could not get it. So I'm not sure if it's because of the bandwidth or the new platform that we're using for the recording. So hopefully it wouldn't be much of a loss for our viewers in terms of the story that you mentioned. Hopefully people will get it. But just FYI that we had that. So going back to 2021, as you indicated, was a very devastating time. In the midst of it, you got busy with getting out the interpreter. That was really frustrating, I'm sure, for you and others who were involved in the process. But overall, looking back at the group that you're fighting or helping, the Afghan National Security Forces and other colleagues who are fighting against the Taliban and terrorists, seeing them coming back and taking over the country and all of the groups coming with them. What is your assessment of the level of threat that is emanating from Afghanistan right now towards the U.S. homeland and U.S. interest and Western democracies around the world?
Well, first I'll say I'm only a layperson. I'm not privy to any inside information, and I've been retired from the military since 2010. But I do follow the news closely. I'm on LinkedIn. I listen to a lot of what's being said and written there. And the threat has not gone away. The Biden administration argued that, well, we can withdraw and we can watch Afghanistan from outside the country. Well, maybe we could, maybe we can, maybe we do. But all those terrorist groups I'm consistently reading that all those terrorist groups are back in Afghanistan. The training camps are back. The groups are back. And some of them may have some differences of opinion with the Taliban. They might not see eye to eye on everything, but they see eye to eye on a common cause. They have a mutual enemy. It's called the United States and the Western allies who helped us in that fight. So as far as I know, as far as I can tell from what I read, and the Taliban haven't changed at all. Gosh, this is such a brutal organization. You know, I was a career civilian prosecutor for many years here in Memphis. And I think about my counterparts in the Afghan courts, military and civilian. They were a big part of the war on terror and a big part of the effort to establish a stable justice system in Afghanistan. When we could, our Afghans, and when cases could be made against suspected terrorists, criminal cases could be made, they were brought to court. And now those prosecutors are targets. Summation: about 60 of those former prosecutors have been murdered since August of 2021. Now, they don't qualify for special immigrant visas. They have to apply through the refugee process for a P1 visa, I think it's called. I know the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys here in the U.S. is vigorously advocating for those people. But President Trump has shut down the refugee admissions program. He has lost challenges in court, but so far he hasn't reopened the program. Meanwhile, these people remain in Afghanistan, in Pakistan. Of course, the Pakistanis aren't happy about having all these Afghans there. They consistently make threats to deport them back into the hands of the Taliban. We both know what that means. I know the whole, to me, the Taliban and their allies are the enemies of all humanity. Mm-hmm. Girls can't go to school past what, the 6th grade?
Yep.
This has been true for several years now. Mm-hmm. Women's voices, I read recently that the Taliban have decreed that women cannot be heard on the radio.
Yeah.
They can't go anywhere without a male escort. I also read something that astounded me. The Taliban decreed that women cannot be seen from their houses. If someone is walking by and sees a woman in her house, it's her fault. Mm-hmm. She has broken the law. There's a level of cruelty here that should not be ignored. For 20 years, we said we cared, and now Afghans believed us, and now we've walked away. And so, that it's shameful. I feel a sense of shame. The Afghans believed us. They trusted us. And then first the Biden administration, and now the Trump administration would just walk away and leave our allies in the dust, subject to the cruelties of our common enemy. Mm-hmm. It's just very, very sad. It's cruel. It's foolish. At some point in the future, we'll need to have troops in some other country, and we'll need local people to work for us and with us. I can imagine that a young man in the future will come home and tell his father, well, the Americans have a job. They want me to work as an interpreter. And if I work as an interpreter for X number of years, I'll get to go to the United States and make a new life. Mm-hmm. If I were that young man's father, I would tell the young man, don't do it. Don't believe them. Don't trust them. It's just going to end badly. And based on what has happened in Afghanistan, that right now, that's what I would tell the young man. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel good about that at all.
Yeah. Well, hopefully
Um,
the new administration.
something.
Sure. Well, hopefully the new administration, the officials involved, there are some veterans there in the administration that we hope that they would be steering the U.S. policy towards a direction that is going to be making sure that the Afghan allies are taken to safety and their refugee statuses are being processed. So hopefully we'll have to wait and see that happens. As you indicated, if it doesn't, it will have negative consequences for U.S. Forces around the world.
Yes, you know, I know a lot of people in the United States are trying hard now to persuade the Trump administration to resume the refugee admissions program and uh, against the Trump administration several times now. So I'm not going to lose hope that we'll be able to uh, resume some movement of our allies to safety.
Yeah. Keep your fingers crossed. Keep your fingers crossed for that. Kevin, what do you think based on your,
Yes, definitely. We can't we can't live we can't live without hope.
of course, of course. Um, Based on your experience, what do you think about the regional involvement with the Taliban and other terrorist groups? We know that Pakistan was involved, the Iranians were involved, and now the Russians as well as the Chinese. What is your understanding based on what you read in open source about your assessment of the regional countries supporting the Taliban and their allies?
Well, when we left a vacuum, a power vacuum, and other countries, from what I read and hear, are trying to fill that. Um, the Chinese, I believe the Chinese want access to the mineral resources of Afghanistan. The Iranians, the Pakistanis. Um, I don't think the United States ever really confronted the Pakistanis over their support for the Afghan Taliban. Um, Maybe that we thought there was a limit to what we could do. We needed some Pakistani help and we didn't want to lose all of it. But the Pakistanis definitely were involved with the Afghan Taliban. Um, I think the Pakistanis played both sides. Um, it's I don't I think we've moved on to other situations. First Ukraine, and then uh, friction between the United States under the Trump administration and the NATO countries. Uh, Talk about acquiring Greenland of all places. Um, and I think we've forgotten Afghanistan. That's tragic. Not only it's tragic for the people who are there and who are suffering because of their associations with us, but also I think it's very foolish because I think this lack of attention will come back to haunt us someday in the not too distant future, and it could cost more American lives. Maybe something on the scale of 9/11 or even worse. The threat's not gone. We're just not paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah, and do you think that there are some that believe that there is the axis of evil, right? The Chinese, Russians, Iranians, part and some elements of the Pakistan as axis of evil, now trying to co-opt terrorism as a mechanism to come after the West and Western countries, and instead of a direct confrontation, that they might be investing more, that they are investing on terrorist activities in the Western countries as we see it right now?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think some people might conclude that terrorism works if you're willing to last long enough, eventually the Western powers will get tired and they'll leave and go home.
Mhm.
That's what we did in Afghanistan. Um, so I've heard some people say terrorism doesn't work. I think there might be room to argue that it does work,
Mhm.
especially against Western nations that don't have the stomach or the will to engage in long, nasty, drawn out conflicts.
Yep, yep. And I think maybe Israel is proving them wrong. So as they're withstanding the type of aggression that they faced on October 7th last year. So we'll see if other Western countries will take hints of how to handle terrorism. You cannot coexist with terrorist states and terrorist organizations in your neighborhood or further away from your neighborhood anywhere on the planet. You need to go after them wherever they are and eliminate them in order to be safe and secure. So hopefully people will, with the right authorities, acknowledge that truth. What do you think about the Afghan diaspora, the anti-Taliban Afghans, those who have left Afghanistan, those who are advocating for Afghanistan's freedom, the women who from the first days standing on the streets of Kabul against the Taliban and protesting in various provinces across the world. And how do you evaluate the Afghans' resistance basically against the Taliban?
Well, I am a fellow with the Global Friends of Afghanistan, and the purpose of that organization, as I see it, is to assist a new generation of leadership for Afghans, both inside and outside the country.
Mhm.
I think it's hope. There's hope, um, but I think it's going to take quite a few years. Um, it will require subordinating the egos of certain people who are involved. And also, women have to be players. They just have to be players in the process. Or else Afghanistan will just exchange uh, one tyranny for another. Um, so I'm hopeful. I appreciate what the Global Friends of Afghanistan are doing. I have met so many talented, capable young Afghan people um, outside of Afghanistan, really bright, capable people. And so I do have hope, but I think it's going to take quite some time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I will say those Afghans abroad bring great strength to their new countries, tremendous strength. I know some people are very hostile toward immigrants in general, but the way I see it, they bring great strength to our country. They're valuable people. Um, for one thing, the food is great.
Mhm.
I love Afghan food. Uh, and the young people are so motivated. Um, I really had admire the young Afghans abroad, admire them and respect them.
Yep. I think people need to realize that, Afghan immigrants and refugees are in a very special category. These are the ones who serve the U.S. forces and Western forces in Afghanistan. So that's why they're called a special immigrant visa holders.
Right.
They are coming in the United States and other countries. And some of them are leading successful lives here. They're doing businesses, they're whatever work that they're doing it the same way that they did honorably and loyally in Afghanistan. They're doing it in the United States and other Western countries. And some of them are looking back to see if they can go back to Afghanistan, and they're working towards that, towards a situation where there would be any need for Afghans to leave their country. So they are focused on that, and they will going back to Afghanistan, and they will be future leaders and decision makers in the country. So basically, they are as guests in the temporary guests in the Western countries. And I haven't heard any hostile reaction towards Afghans. I've heard statements about immigration in general, but I haven't heard anything about Afghanistan. I think that shows that people in America and the Western countries, they realize about the nature of the refugees that Afghans are. And hopefully that will continue to stay that way, that they would be treated in a different way than the rest of the category of refugees who are coming illegally or through other ways or
Yes.
undermining the security or undermining the societies that they are living. So,
I do think
yeah, sure.
I do think many Americans realize that Afghans are people who served with us, shona bashona, shoulder to shoulder. They made common cause with us.
Yeah.
I know that, but for my interpreter, I wouldn't have been able to function at all in Afghanistan. Um, they were critical to our effort there. They were mission essential. And also, by and large, Afghans are not coming here illegally. They are pursuing immigration through the legal process. Uh, uh, the refugees, if people come here via the refugee admissions program, they're coming here legally. Mm-hmm. If they come here via the special immigrant visa program, they are coming here legally. If they come here and ask for asylum and is granted, they're coming here legally. This is not about illegal immigration. This is about legal immigration. Some people say, well, I'm for immigration, but I want people to do it the right way. Mm-hmm. Well, by and large, Afghans are doing it the right way. All they ask is for a chance to do it the right way.
Yes. Absolutely. And to your point earlier that you mentioned, Afghans are Muslims, but they are progressive Muslims. They're very liberal Muslims, and they're first of all Afghans before being Muslims in most of the cases that you study. And so they contribute culturally here, and they're not here as agents of their religion. They're as agents of their country and diversity that they are, and embracing the diversity and the similarities that we have, Afghans, Americans, in terms of diversity, in terms of our love and for freedom and cherishing our freedom. And one of the factors that makes Afghans vulnerable in the geography that we are is our progressive nature. That's why neighboring countries, Islamist countries, support extremists to subjugate our nation, because they don't want a liberal Muslim country to survive in that geography that will then shame them, that why are they extremist in their approaches. So maybe we can talk about the new administration. What do you think? What do you hear so far from the statements that you hear, the veterans who are there at the administration? What do you think? Do you think there's a commitment to actually take a look at Afghanistan in a much more thorough sense and see how it is to the U.S. interest in order to be present in Afghanistan, in order to have Bagram, in order to have the Kandahar airfield, in order to have Shendan airfield, and these critical airfields in that strategic geography, and making sure that it is done through having a democratic representative government in Afghanistan that would be a partner with the U.S. forces in that region, as you're also trying to counter these authoritarian states. Afghans are also invested and are interested to make sure that those authoritarian states in the neighborhood are countered, especially what we saw in terms of their support to the Taliban and how they're treating Afghans after the collapse of Afghanistan, while the U.S. and allies were evacuating Afghans on their military planes, and with all of the hardships that you described. All of the neighboring countries, these authoritarian states in the neighborhood, they blocked their doors, they canceled visas, they did not have any Afghans. And so we have a shared common goal to address those authoritarian states in the neighborhood, and the U.S. Also needs to deal with them at some point, and we can only do that by having the U.S. forces on the ground. Do you think the new administration understands that, and we are going to see a realistic, pragmatic policy from the new administration?
Yeah. Well, Sadiq, not yet. Um, I think, as you mentioned, there are veterans in the new administration, and I'm glad for that. I would hope they do understand the necessity of taking care of our allies and the necessity of coming up with uh, a more sound policy when it comes to dealing with Afghanistan. However, I'm concerned by some of the statements that are coming out of the administration, some of the actions. I do think there's an element in the new administration that plays to that fear of immigrants, fear of people who speak a different language or worship God in a different way. I think it's very important that veterans and other concerned Americans continue to advocate for our Afghans because not only is it in the best interest of our allies and the people who remain in Afghanistan, it's also in the best interest of our country. You know, America was founded based on certain ideals, certain principles, universal ideals and universal principles that, at least in theory, apply to all human beings, not just people who speak a certain language or worship God in a certain way, but all human beings. That is our, I mean, we're not a particular ethnicity. And we're not a particular religion either, as I understand it. So when we act in a way that is narrow-minded, provincial, suspicious, fearful toward other countries, other people, then we act, to me, we act contrary to our ideals and our principles, the things that make us unique. And then we become, I'm not sure what we become. Some people in the past have said that America is an exceptional nation. But unless we make some effort to remain true to those ideals, then we're not an exceptional nation. We're just like any other nation, and we have no particular reason to exist. So, you know, advocating for our allies, for Afghan former allies, adopting a sensible policy toward Afghanistan is not only in the interest of Afghans, but it's in the interest of Americans too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you, as you indicated, you know, that there is a possibility for another 9/11 attacks, given all of these terrorist groups coming back in Afghanistan under the umbrella of the Taliban, and much
Yes.
worse. And we're hearing it from a lot of veterans about this. You know, sometimes you wonder, like, why are they not acting? If everybody agrees that there is a possibility of something like 9/11 happening again, much worse, why is there nobody taking action? What do you think is blocking people from taking action?
Well, I think sometimes, Sadiq, there's a human tendency to ignore situations until they get so bad that you can't ignore them anymore. I have read that there were warnings in the years leading up to 9/11 that something really bad was going to happen, but our government didn't pay attention. And maybe we're back in a situation that's somewhat similar to those years before 9/11 when we were being warned, but we didn't pay attention until so many people had to died on 9/11.
Yeah. Hopefully not again. That's why
I
we're talking. That's why we're doing this.
Yes.
Make sure everybody understands. Last time also, as you indicated, everybody was saying this. Afghan leaders were loudly saying it. Deal with the Taliban. It's not an Afghan problem. It's not your friend. They're not going to be changing. They're not going to be reformed. This is a terrorist group that is keen, that is established to hurt you. It's an umbrella organization. They have an emir that is a shadow, that is a ghost. He does not speak with any leader. He does not speak with any king. He does not consider anybody to his level. He feels he's got direct connection with God that to destroy the world, and we need to stop him before it's too late. And hopefully, people will realize that. People hopefully will listen to you, will listen to this interview, and will take it seriously, and will take the necessary actions in order to get rid of this terrorist group from controlling Afghanistan, freeing 20 million women and girls that are there, freeing the people of Afghanistan who are our allies, the Western countries' allies, and then going back, utilizing the air bases which are strategically located and the resources that needs to be in the service of the Western liberal order, not in the service of the authoritarian states. We shouldn't allow those resources to be stolen by the authoritarian states and then used against us in a conflict that may come in the future. So hopefully people will realize all of that.
Yes, I hope so. I
Yes.
hope so.
Yeah.
I hope they will. Um, I suppose, well, we have to speak up. We
Yes.
have to keep speaking up. And God willing, inshallah, some of what we say will sink into some heads.
I'm sure about that. I'm sure our friends will be watching it and they will be taking notes. Kevin, it's really amazing to have you. It was really amazing to speak with you. There's a lot that I can talk with you about various aspects of your experience with Afghans and Afghanistan. But we need to keep it at the limit of 1 hour. And so maybe before we end the interview, if you have any message to the U.S. leadership, if you have any message to the American people and to the Afghans, those who are stuck in Afghanistan, those who are refugees, any message that you have to those who are watching us will be great.
Sure. Thank you, Sadiq. First, to our Afghan friends who remain in Afghanistan or in refugee status in another country. Many of your former companions from the United States have not forgotten you. They will never forget you. They feel very strongly about what happened and the need to make sure that you are safe. I think that but for those American veterans, there wouldn't have been any evacuation in 2021. And there wouldn't be any effort now to continue to get you out of this country. Second, to Americans, well-meaning Americans, this situation of the left behind is not just a problem, a challenge for veterans to address. We were there in Afghanistan in your name, in the name of all Americans. And so, their situation ought to be a concern of yours. I would like to mention that recently I started a fundraising campaign to help one Afghan farmer interpreter and his family. He's still in Afghanistan waiting on the United States government to take some action on his application for a special immigrant visa. Many of these people, like him, have waited for years, and now they're still waiting. But people need to eat too. Because he is a former interpreter, he has a target on his back. He can't work. He lives in hiding. His family lives in hiding. Can you imagine the mental stress and strain that a family must feel living in hiding for year after year? I set up a fundraising campaign with a company called ASEEL, ASEEL. Amongst other things, they deliver food to people in Afghanistan. It's a trustworthy, reliable company. I've used them. If you go to aseelapp.com, ASEELAPP.com, and search for Save an Afghan Family and Save the Entire World, you can make a donation to that campaign. Any money that I receive there will be used to buy food for this family. Their husband, wife, and two little girls. I have two girls. They're grown now, but I have two daughters, just as he does, and I have a little granddaughter. Um, Obviously, I care about them and I love them, and I know he loves his family. So, anything you can do to help this man and his family will be greatly appreciated by him and by me. No donation is too small. Any donation will be appreciated. We can't save the entire world, but we can at least save one family at a time. And that's what I'm doing, and that's what I hope. That's why I hope you'll join me.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for your kind message, and for support to this Afghan family. I hope all of the viewers who are watching will go to the website that you indicated and look for this campaign and donate for this Afghan family. And everybody needs to contribute and do their part in whatever capacity that we have resources available to us. So thank you very much to all of our viewers. This was our today's episode of the Real Talks with Amini with Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Rardin, former U.S. Army Reserves officer who's retired, a friend of Afghanistan, a dedicated officer who has served the United States honorably in various capacities, civilian as well as armed forces in uniform in the front lines, and has been a strong advocate of the U.S.-Afghanistan relationship, U.S.-Afghanistan interest, and a voice of the Afghan allies in the United States among veteran communities. We are glad to have him. And we talked with him about various aspects, and you heard his perspectives on the level of threat that's emanating from Afghanistan and what needs to be done. Thank you very much. Until our next episode, God bless you. God bless Afghanistan. God bless the United States, and God bless our world. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Sadiq.